between the United States and Yemen's Houthi rebels came into effect. Brokered by the Sultanate of Oman, this fragile truce offers a desperately needed respite from the violence that has gripped Yemen for far too long. The international community, while cautiously optimistic, remains acutely aware of the challenges that lie ahead in securing a lasting peace. The ceasefire announcement came as a relief to many, particularly the beleaguered Yemeni population who have borne the brunt of this protracted conflict. The agreement, while limited in scope, represents a crucial first step towards ending the bloodshed and alleviating the humanitarian crisis that has plagued Yemen for over a decade. However, skepticism remains high as previous attempts at peace have crumbled, leaving a trail of broken promises and shattered hopes. The road to peace is fraught with obstacles and the path ahead is uncertain. The deep-seated mistrust between the warring parties, coupled with the complex geopolitical landscape of the region, poses significant challenges to the ceasefire's long-term viability. Moreover, the agreement's narrow focus on maritime security in the Red Sea and Bab al-Mandab Strait does not address the underlying political issues that have fueled the conflict. The success of this fragile ceasefire hinges on the commitment of all parties involved to abide by its terms and engage in meaningful dialogue. The international community must remain actively engaged, providing the necessary support and pressure to ensure that this opportunity for peace is not squandered. The coming days and weeks will be critical in determining whether this fragile truce can be translated into a lasting peace for the long-suffering people of Yemen. In the heart of the Arabian Peninsula lies Oman, a nation long known for its neutrality and deft diplomacy. It is this reputation that has allowed Oman to carve out a unique role as a mediator in one of the world's most volatile regions. In the case of the US Houthi ceasefire, Oman once again stepped up to bridge the chasm of distrust between adversaries. Oman's foreign minister, Badr al-Busaidi, emerged as a key player in the delicate negotiations. With a calm demeanor and a reputation for discretion, al-Busaidi shuttled between Washington and Sana'a, carrying messages and proposals in a bid to find common ground. Oman's ability to maintain open channels of communication with both the US and the Houthis proved invaluable in breaking through the deadlock. This latest diplomatic success for Oman is not an isolated incident. The Sultanate has a long history of mediating disputes in the region, often playing the role of quiet facilitator behind the scenes. From hosting talks between Iran and the West to mediating conflicts in Yemen's Dhofar region, Oman has consistently championed dialogue and peaceful resolution. Oman's foreign policy is rooted in the principles of non-interference, peaceful coexistence, and regional stability. The country has deliberately chosen to remain outside the fray of regional power struggles, preferring to build bridges rather than burn them. This approach has earned Oman respect and trust from actors across the political spectrum, making it an ideal mediator in times of crisis. The ceasefire agreement, brokered by Oman, centers around a quid pro quo. The US has agreed to halt its bombing campaign against Houthi targets, while the Houthis have pledged to cease attacks on ships transiting the Red Sea and the strategically vital Bab al-Mandab Strait. This narrow focus on maritime security reflects the immediate concerns of the international community, particularly the disruption to global trade caused by Houthi attacks on commercial vessels. The agreement does not explicitly address the ongoing conflict within Yemen itself. The Houthis, who control the capital Sana'a and much of northern Yemen, remain locked in a bitter struggle with the internationally recognized government, which is backed by a Saudi-led coalition. The ceasefire does not stipulate a halt to fighting between these parties, nor does it address the humanitarian crisis unfolding in Yemen. The lack of details surrounding the ceasefire's implementation and enforcement mechanisms has raised concerns about its long-term viability. The agreement does not specify a timeline for the cessation of hostilities, nor does it outline any monitoring or verification mechanisms to ensure compliance. This ambiguity leaves the door open for misinterpretation and potential violations, which could quickly unravel the fragile truce. Despite its limitations, the ceasefire agreement represents a glimmer of hope in an otherwise bleak landscape. It offers a window of opportunity to de-escalate tensions, alleviate the suffering of the Yemeni people, and pave the way for a more comprehensive political solution. However, translating this fragile truce into a lasting peace will require sustained diplomatic efforts, a genuine commitment to dialogue, and a willingness to address the root causes of the conflict. The recent ceasefire agreement cannot be viewed in isolation. It is but the latest chapter in a long and tumultuous saga of Houthi aggression in the Red Sea and beyond. To understand the significance of this truce, one must delve into the historical context of Houthi tactics and motivations. The Houthi movement, a Shia-led group that has long held grievances against the Yemeni government, rose to prominence in the early 2000s. By 2014, they had seized control of Sana'a, forcing the internationally recognized government into exile. This power grab plunged Yemen into a full-blown civil war, drawing in regional powers and exacerbating existing sectarian tensions. As the conflict escalated, the Houthis increasingly resorted to asymmetric tactics, including the use of sea mines, drone attacks, and anti-ship missiles. These attacks, often targeting commercial vessels in the Red Sea and Bab al-Mandab Strait, were designed to disrupt international shipping lanes and exert pressure on the Saudi-led coalition backing the Yemeni government. The Houthis justified their actions as a legitimate response to the Saudi-led blockade of Yemen, which has severely restricted the flow of humanitarian aid and essential goods into the country. They argued that their attacks on shipping were a necessary measure to break the blockade and alleviate the suffering of the Yemeni people. The international community, however, condemned the Houthi attacks as a violation of international law and a threat to global trade. These actions further isolated the Houthis diplomatically and strengthened the resolve of their adversaries to counter their influence in the region. Section 5, Operation Rough Rider, the U.S. response to Houthi provocations. The recent ceasefire agreement marked a pause in a U.S. military operation that had been escalating for weeks. Dubbed Operation Rough Rider, the campaign was launched in mid-March 2025 in response to renewed Houthi attacks on commercial shipping in the Red Sea. The operation, authorized by President Trump, marked a significant escalation of U.S. involvement in the Yemen conflict. Operation Rough Rider primarily involved airstrikes against Houthi military targets, including weapons depots, command centers, and drone launch sites. The U.S. military claimed that the strikes were conducted with precision, minimizing civilian casualties. However, independent reports suggested that the operation had resulted in hundreds of Houthi casualties, including civilian deaths. The Trump administration justified Operation Rough Rider as a necessary measure to protect freedom of navigation in the Red Sea and deter further Houthi aggression. They argued that the Houthis, emboldened by perceived U.S. inaction, had stepped up their attacks on shipping, posing a grave threat to global trade and regional stability. "We will not tolerate threats to international shipping lanes," declared President Trump in a televised address announcing the operation. "The Houthis have been put on notice. Their reign of terror must end." The U.S. military deployment in the region was substantial, involving warships, fighter jets, and drone units. The USS Dwight D. Eisenhower aircraft carrier strike group was deployed to the Arabian Sea, providing a potent symbol of American military might. Section 6, a divided response. Trump claims victory while critics cry foul. The announcement of the ceasefire agreement elicited a mixed response from the international community. President Trump, eager to claim a foreign policy victory, hailed the agreement as a testament to American strength and resolve. He portrayed the Houthis' decision to cease attacks on shipping as a capitulation, a direct result of the U.S. military pressure exerted through Operation Rough Rider. "The Houthis have learned a valuable lesson," Trump declared triumphantly. "When America speaks with a strong and unified voice, our enemies listen. They know that we will not hesitate to use force to protect our interests and our allies." Trump's self-congratulatory tone, however, was met with skepticism and criticism from many quarters. Critics, both at home and abroad, accused the Trump administration of exaggerating the success of Operation Rough Rider and downplaying its human cost. They argued that the ceasefire agreement, while welcome, was primarily the result of Omani mediation, not U.S. military might. "This ceasefire is a testament to Omani diplomacy, not Trump's bluster," tweeted Senator Chris Murphy, a vocal critic of U.S. policy in Yemen. The Trump administration's reckless escalation brought us to the brink of a wider war. We must seize this opportunity for peace and end our complicity in the humanitarian catastrophe unfolding in Yemen. The debate over the ceasefire agreement highlighted the deep partisan divisions in the US over foreign policy. While Republicans largely echoed Trump's triumphant rhetoric, Democrats expressed cautious optimism, urging the administration to prioritize diplomacy and humanitarian aid over military intervention. Section 7, The Human Cost of Conflict, Airstrikes Leave Scars on Yemen. Lost in the political posturing and the debate over military strategy is the human toll of the conflict in Yemen. For over a decade, the Yemeni people have endured unimaginable suffering, caught in the crossfire of a war not of their making. The recent escalation of violence, including the US-led Operation Rough Rider, has only exacerbated an already dire humanitarian crisis. The airstrikes carried out as part of Operation Rough Rider, while ostensibly targeting military installations, have resulted in civilian casualties and damage to civilian infrastructure. In one particularly devastating incident on April 28, 2025, a suspected US airstrike hit a migrant center in northern Yemen, killing 68 people, including women and children. The attack on the migrant center sparked international outrage and renewed calls for an end to the conflict. Aid organizations working in Yemen condemned the strike, highlighting the urgent need to protect civilians and ensure accountability for violations of international humanitarian law. This tragedy is a stark reminder of the human cost of this senseless war, said a spokesperson for Doctors Without Borders. Civilians are bearing the brunt of the violence, with hospitals and schools bombed and essential services on the brink of collapse. Beyond the immediate casualties, the conflict has had a devastating impact on Yemen's already fragile infrastructure. Hospitals, schools, water treatment plants and power grids have been damaged or destroyed, leaving millions without access to basic necessities. The COVID-19 pandemic has further exacerbated the humanitarian crisis, overwhelming the country's healthcare system and pushing the population to the brink of famine. Section 8. A chorus of concern. The world reacts to the crisis in Yemen. The ceasefire agreement between the US and the Houthis was met with a mix of cautious optimism and deep concern by the international community. The United Nations, which has long been engaged in efforts to mediate a political solution to the Yemen conflict, welcomed the truce as a positive step towards de-escalation. The ceasefire is a much-needed respite for the people of Yemen, who have endured unimaginable suffering, stated UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres in a statement released shortly after the agreement came into effect. I urge all parties to seize this opportunity to engage in good faith negotiations towards a comprehensive political solution. The UN Special Envoy for Yemen, Hans Grundberg, echoed Guterres' sentiments, describing the ceasefire as a glimmer of hope in an otherwise bleak landscape. Grundberg, who has been spearheading international efforts to revive peace talks, emphasized the need to translate the truce into a lasting ceasefire and address the underlying political issues driving the conflict. The European Union, a major donor of humanitarian aid to Yemen, also welcomed the ceasefire, calling it a positive step towards ending the violence and alleviating the suffering of the Yemeni people. The EU urged all parties to abide by the terms of the agreement and engage in a constructive dialogue to find a lasting political solution to the conflict. Regional powers, including Saudi Arabia and Iran, expressed cautious support for the ceasefire. Saudi Arabia, which leads the military coalition fighting alongside the Yemeni government, welcomed the truce as a step towards a political solution. Iran, which backs the Houthi rebels, also expressed support for the ceasefire, calling it a victory for the Yemeni people. Section 9. An uncertain future. Can peace prevail in Yemen? The ceasefire agreement, while a welcome development, represents just the first tentative step on a long and arduous road to peace in Yemen. The agreement's narrow focus on maritime security does little to address the underlying political, economic and social issues that have fueled the conflict for over a decade. The truce remains fragile, with no clear mechanisms for enforcement or accountability. The absence of a third-party monitoring force raises concerns about potential violations and a rapid return to hostilities. The deep mistrust between the warring parties, coupled with the complex web of regional and international interests at play, further complicates efforts to achieve a lasting peace. The international community must seize this opportunity to push for a comprehensive political solution. This will require sustained diplomatic engagement, a genuine commitment to dialogue, and a willingness to address the legitimate grievances of all parties involved. The humanitarian crisis in Yemen demands immediate attention. The international community must scale up its efforts to provide life-saving assistance to millions in need. Lifting the blockade on Yemen's ports, ensuring the unimpeded flow of humanitarian aid, and addressing the country's collapsing healthcare system are all critical priorities. The road to peace in Yemen will be long and challenging. The ceasefire agreement, while fragile, offers a glimmer of hope that a political solution is still attainable. The international community must not squander this opportunity to end the suffering of